Hello everyone, we are going to build on previous example with a join invoices and vendors. That is the resulting set of that join. I want to do something slightly more interesting with invoice line items. And first of all, we got to go and explore what is invoice line items. Now, invoice ID, invoice sequence, account number. This is invoice line item amount, and this is the description. Lots of freight here, and lease, and health insurance, and whatnot. Now, the meaning of this table, this is for every invoice in the invoices. This is the explicit version of that invoice that is itemized. So, for example, invoice ID 12 had 4 items on the invoice, and the price of each and the description of each is given over here. And the natural question for it, instead of invoice ID, can I see the vendor which generated this invoice? And we are not going to start from scratch. We are going to build from our previous query. All right, so I need to include these items. Maybe I won't include account number. So I want to include these columns from invoice line items. So I'm just going to include them, maybe drop invoice ID if I don't need it, or keep it up to us, up to the business problem that we're solving, really. And invoice sequence, invoice line item amount, invoice line item description, invoice ID, let's keep it for now. Maybe I want to relocate it though, since I decided to keep it together with invoice sequence. Should be together with invoice sequence. And you see that some of them are underlined, so we did not include in this join the invoice line items yet. And that's what we are going to do next. Join invoice line items. And I need to describe on. And how am I joining on invoice IDs? I'm joining on invoice IDs. All right, so invoices dot invoice ID equals to invoice line item, that is the name of the table, dot invoice ID. And notice there is something underlined in red still. That is, we have to be mindful of the fact that the column invoice ID comes from, one of them comes from invoices, the other comes from invoice line items. So we have to qualify that. Before that, we didn't have to qualify because there is only one place where a column can come from, usually. But in this case, it's not, so I'm saying invoices, even though the resulting values will be the same, we have to qualify. ID dot invoices dot invoice ID. And now we have no red underlining, so there is a chance that this will work. Let's see how it works. So now I can see invoice ID, invoice sequence, amount, and invoice total. I don't really need invoice total anymore because now I have the explicit breakdown for every invoice. For example, here, these 4 numbers in total are equal to 662. You can spend a moment checking that, but in any case, I don't need this total anymore. Yes, so it's a very good idea to understand where these numbers come from, how they relate to each other, and what business meaning does these queries have, what kind of questions they are answering. So those are not some random contraptions. Each of these queries would be a result of a business question, uh, which would definitely sound a little bit vague and descriptive coming from whatever manager is asking it. So a manager says, I want to see invoice IDs, sequences. I want to see invoice line item and description and vendor name in one result set. And notice that I'm avoiding the word table because in the terminology of SQL Server, this is not a table. This is a result set, or like the what is returned by a query. Tables are actually over here, the actual tables of the data base.